Hi, thanks for joining me in the Everything and Anything and a Bit Gay podcast. Today I have Chad Michael Hardy on my show, and Chad has a very interesting background that we're going to get into. So, welcome to the show, Chad.
Oh, thank you so much, Zach. I appreciate it.
So, Chad has an interesting background because you may have heard of this controversial calendar called Hot Mormon Muffin, where he was taking. You want to tell the story about how you came up with this and exactly what the calendar was?
Oh man. So there's a huge backstory here, and I think I'll try to get to the point as quickly as possible, just because
Okay.
if I were to just say, I think this calendar it would take a little, it would come a little bit out of context of why.
Yeah.
So I grew up out in the LDS faith, very much true believing, and went on a mission, the whole thing.
Oh, wow.
And I did work so hard, and I talk about this in my book about my upbringing and how I worked so hard to fit this mold of this perfect Mormon life. Because if you can fit the mold, it's a really nice life. And I started to realize that this life was never meant for me. Of course, being a gay man, it's very difficult to find your path in that organization and that thing.
Did you know you were gay back at that point, or did you not realize that at that?
Well, it was a slow unravel. It was one thing that I knew it was there, but I thought that it was a phase or
Mhm.
it would go away because I was so, I was obedient and all of these things. So, of course, when it didn't happen, you start to really become traumatized.
Mm.
You start to lose your faith, and everything that you believe in starts to unravel. In the midst of all of this, I moved to southern Utah, a beautiful area called St. George.
Okay.
Yeah, kind of the entrance to Zion National Park. If anyone's ever been there, it's beautiful. And I moved there because I partnered with the city of St. George to start a weekly street fair. And it was like an overnight sensation. Like the whole community was like, wow, this is so great. And everybody loved it except some of these retailers down on the main street that would shut down the street every week. They pretty much went on a witch hunt, and
Mhm.
the one day they were unhappy. They were causing problems from the very beginning. And I got last minute asked to come to a city council meeting, not to present, just to be there. And these town folk had this whole like presentation. They had a whole like board, like a little flip boards, like
Yeah.
my personal MySpace pictures, and essentially said that this person does not represent our town. And we don't need his kind.
Oh, that's
And
drastic.
yeah, it was pretty wild. It was like, this is like something on Footloose.
Yeah.
This isn't real life. And they revoked my license and pretty much ran me out of town. And all the money I put into it, didn't get it back. Then they turned around and started it themselves. And after I was gone. So I moved to, a lot of things happened, and you have to read the book to get all the nitty gritty details of how I turned myself around. And one of them was a near death experience, and where my sister and I really could be on the show. I shouldn't be alive because we shouldn't be.
Can you tell me
And
a little bit about that after this story? Because I want to hear that too.
yeah, well, I mean, I can give you just a brief. She was getting ready to leave on her mission for the church and decided to do something fun together. We rented jet skis, and one thing leads to another, and we end up stranded in the middle of the lake, and we had to swim 6 miles ashore in
Wow.
hypothermia and all this stuff, middle of the night. 6 foot swells crashing over us, pushing us underwater. This is a lake that's notorious for killing people for this varying reason, because it's a shallow lake. The winds pick up, these swells come, and you can't survive them even with a life vest on. But we did. And so out there in that lake, I decided that if I survived this, I was going to move to Las Vegas and start a team building company. And so with the little scraps of money that I had after we survived, I did that. So I moved to Vegas, started this team building company, but I was still running really hurt. And of course, in the moment, you don't realize this. It's looking, and especially, in writing my book, I started to realize as the dots connected backwards that wow, I was out for blood. I wanted revenge so badly. And I thought, what's the best way to get revenge? And it wasn't just the people of St. George. It was a culmination of being treated unfairly through my whole life and being made to believe that I was unworthy and broken. And so I had this crazy idea, and I don't even know how how it all came together, but so quickly, but it did. But I just had this idea about the calendar, and I was talking to a friend about it, and her husband walked in when we were having this conversation, laughing about this idea of doing a beefcake calendar
Yeah.
featuring Mormon missionaries or returned Mormon missionaries called Men on a Mission. We thought, oh, how funny would that be? He walks in, thought it was brilliant, and he's like, "How much do you need?" And I'm like, "I don't know, 50,000." I'm thinking to get it, to production and that,
Yeah.
But he should right there put out his hand, deal,
Wow.
and he ended up financing it. Next thing you know, and that was like I would say that was sometime in the spring, and by fall we had a calendar, and we didn't know what we were doing. We just put out a press release, and next thing everybody's calling us, and even Calendar Club, they're the company that puts the calendars in all the malls across America. They reached out and said, "We don't ever do this. You have to submit." And there's a year plus process, but everyone's asking for your calendar, and they made a huge purchase, put them in malls across America. So here I was, I had this calendar. Even showed us how like revengeful I was at that time. I signed copies of them to the city council.
Good for you.
Thank George. Yeah, it was quite the experience. And then the church didn't really ever say anything for quite a while. And then they had a change in leadership. And after that, they started coming knocking on my door. And the new leadership wanted this to go away. So they started constantly contacting me, coming over, asking me to stop production of it. Told them I couldn't. And that led to them having what they call a church court.
Okay.
And they excommunicated me for this. And in the meantime, I had just finished my studies at Brigham Young University, and I finished my courses, but the degree hadn't posted yet. So I was wondering why they were like fast track. Because like, why are they in such a rush to our church? There's this loophole in this at BYU that if you're not in good honor code standing when your degree posts, then they can revoke it. And so
They did that.
They did, because you're not in good honor code standing because you're no longer a member of the church, which then unraveled a whole nother issue because that goes against the accreditation rules for all colleges. So we reached out to the Northwest Commission, and they were like, "Nothing to see here, no violation." For a skewed document. And after that, I was running even more hurt. And so I came out with the Hot Mormon Muffins, which was a calendar featuring Mormon moms and their muffin recipes.
Yeah.
And then we did a BYU edition of the, Mr. August. I saw this by now, I'm going to be in it. And it ran for 5 years. The female one, we only did 1 year.
Yeah.
It was a huge success. It was just, the church made it very difficult for us to do it because they scared everybody into participating. So it was very hard for us to get models because we wanted authentic.
Yeah.
Cool. And then I just moved on with my life. And 10 years later, I started looking back at that whole experience and realized that, wow, that was actually great. I didn't realize at the time.
Yeah.
Being cheeky and my way of dealing with trauma. I think a lot of us, especially gays and members of the LGBTQ community, a lot of us use humor to like put a Band-Aid on our trauma.
And was being excommunicated only because of the calendar, or was it because you were gay as well?
That's a question a lot of people used to ask. It was strictly for the calendar. They were very smart in their strategy to not say that I was, or the question about my homosexuality. In fact, the hilarious thing is they were actually accusing me of living with a woman because you're not supposed to live with anybody of the opposite sex if you're not married. Yeah, it's very archaic when I have these rules, but that's one of them.
Yeah.
And I had an employee at the time who worked for me, and we worked out of my home, and I lived in a guard gated community. There was a person there that would let people in. And so she didn't have to check in at the guard. I listed her as a resident so she can come and go. Somehow the church got their hands on those records, which I even called to say, "Hey, can you tell me who lives next door?" And they're like, "Sorry, Mr. Hardy, that's confidential." So they told me, they're like, other members of the church live in the neighborhood, and they said that she lives there. She's a resident. I'm like, where are they getting this? But then I remember, wow, she's listed as a resident. So that is what they actually were questioning me on in court. They are pretty like women was like living with a woman outside of wedlock. But they did not bring up anything homosexual, anything being gay, because they knew that would cause a massive brush fire. Because at the same time, if you remember, Proposition 8 was a big thing in California. And those who don't know about that, it was a proposition that reversed gay marriage rights in California, which looking back seems how did that even happen? But a lot of money was being funneled from the church and in Utah. And I should say the church, but church members
Okay.
that we know of. And so it was a kind of a sore point because people were protesting in front of the Mormon temple in Los Angeles. There was a lot going on. And so the last thing they needed is they excommunicated the gay member. It's funny that there was, I think it was Out magazine. It was Out. I think it was one of them. I can't remember. This was a long time ago. But they wanted to do a feature story on me. But once I told them I wasn't specifically excommunicated for being gay, because they wanted that story. The church knew that. They knew everybody wanted that story. But the reality is yes, of course. I mean, there was no like reaching out with an olive branch or trying to build a bridge with Mormon. Strictly, the decision had been made from Salt Lake City, and they wanted to move on.
Are you glad that this happened at the end? Did you feel strongly about being part of that religion, or are you? Because your life changed because this is what you grew up with, and now that's not part of your life anymore. So how do you feel about that?
Yeah, I think up until being excommunicated, I was still living right in two worlds where you still believed in this, but then you knew that your life was somehow in contradiction to it.
Yeah.
And once I got like the boot, once that door closed, I was able to fully heal because I no longer had any strings attached to me, thinking maybe I could go back or maybe there's something I can do to find a middle ground. There was no middle ground. It was move on. This is now your new reality. And it was difficult. This is some high level coding when you're raised in any type of environment like that, where you're taught that this is the only way to live. There is no plan B. There's only plan A. There's no plan B. Plan B is you're out. So
do you think it's a little cultish?
I think that the definition of a cult is anybody who follows a leader that's not themselves.
Yeah.
So that puts a lot of things in the cult category. That would put pretty much any religion. I sometimes think that there's a lot of things and even politics that seem cultish.
Yeah, politics is definitely cultish now.
And but is it cultish? I hate to give it a strong yes because I feel like everything is cultish. It was just a way of life that just didn't align with me.
Yeah. Oh, understood. And what about the models that were in your calendar? Were they judged or prosecuted by the church as well?
Many of them were called in to their local church leaders and pretty much told to not do it again or else. And those who were still really active in the church distanced themselves from the project.
Yeah.
And the models that came forward afterwards were ones that were like me, like 1 foot in, 1 foot out. They didn't really care.
Yeah.
And they liked the message that the message was, hey, we don't all follow this straight now. We can all be individuals and show our human side and our humanity. And so it was difficult for sure. And those who are like controlled by that environment, they were definitely running scared.
Are you in a relationship now?
Not right now.
And would you date somebody from that, I guess maybe a current or ex-member of the LDS church?
It would depend on if they've healed their trauma.
Okay.
I definitely don't want, and this is in and out of the church, I don't really want to involve myself with anybody that is unwilling to look under the hood and heal their past. Because if you don't heal your trauma, or if you don't deal with your trauma, your relationships will be dealing with it. Yeah.
Got it. So tell me a little bit about after you were done with the calendar and you moved on, and you have another kind of entrepreneurial company that you started called the Venture Gains. Tell me about that.
Yeah. So after, calendar was completely finished, I moved to San Diego, and I'd started this team building company in Las Vegas when I first moved there. So it had been running, but it'd been, again, I was I look back at life, it was just chaos. So I never really gave adventure games the attention that needed because I was doing this calendar and then I was doing this and that. I felt like it didn't have solid focus. And then I finally decided, you know what, I'm just going to focus on one thing and make it really successful.
Okay.
And I thought, well, one thing that's actually been doing well is my team buildings. And I love it too. I love the idea of going into organizations and helping coworkers build new relationships and bond and have fun and enjoy their job.
Yeah.
So I moved to San Diego to get out of Vegas because Vegas at this point had become real toxic for me. And as soon as I landed here, it was this breath of energy and things just started growing. And next thing you know, I'm hiring an employee and then 2 employees and 3 employees.
Yeah.
And we started growing across the country and we do more team building outside of the state of California than in. And Florida is actually Florida and Texas are big markets.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And so most people now don't even know me in association with the calendar. They don't know about the calendar. I haven't talked about it. I actually dropped my last name for my work. I just go by my first and middle name. My name, you're going to get all of the stories.
Yeah. I
And
did that before the call, and that was the first thing that popped up actually.
so I kept that separate. And now the Adventure Games runs itself. I've got a great team, people all over the country, facilitators that run everything. And so I'm really not as involved, just to step in as needed. And then that kind of really opened up my time to where I could start doing the book. I started writing it while I was still working on getting Adventure Games to be on autopilot. But now that the book is out, I can give it my full attention.
So tell me about the book and what sparked you to write it. And just it seems you've had a lot of different kind of lives already in your life. Like you've had a lot of different scenarios. So what made you decide to sit down and write this book and what inspired it?
So I started writing it right after I got excommunicated. So to give you a timeline, that would have been around 2008. And I really wanted to just forgive everything and everyone because I thought that's going to be the only way I'm going to move. And I had a lot of experience with forgiveness. And if you read my book, you'll hear a really miraculous story that happened to me. And actually within the church where I was like told very bluntly that I needed to forgive, or I wasn't going to move on in my life. And so I never forgot that. And I have to, like, as much as I don't align with the teachings of the Mormon faith, I align with the values of being a good human. And I align with my family and do good, be good, and be happy, really. And so that I've always carried with me. And vigilante to say, the college system in our country is corrupt. The way he was corrupt. The church is corrupt. If you look at it, everything in the faith, there's corruption everywhere. It's like, where do you want to spend your time? Where do you want to shine?
Yeah.
And I decided I wanted to just heal and move on. And so I want to write a book of forgiveness. And in doing so, maybe it'll help me forgive. And I started writing the book and I realized I am just being a vigilante here. I'm just exposing all the nitty gritty, dirty details of what happened in that scenario. And I don't want to be that person.
Yeah.
So I put it away. And that was like 2009. Fast forward to 2019. So 10 years later, my really good friend, his name's Quinn, and we're a good friend, Yoy. They called me up one day and like on a conference call, and reached out. You need to finish it. And we feel really strongly, maybe we could even pitch it as a TV show, et cetera, about people stories of forgiveness. And I'm like, great. And like, no, we're on our way. We're expecting to. So they drove down from LA to San Diego and sat on my dining room table. And I opened up my computer and I typed in the name of my book that I had written. And in the meantime, those 10 years, somebody wrote my book. Like the same title, the same concept. It was that, which is hilarious because, or not hilarious, but hilarious. My grandfather used to always tell me that if you have a good idea, you got to on it immediately, because he said there's like a trap door in the back of your brain and those ideas float into the universe and someone else is going to grab that idea and they're going to do it. And I've had many experiences where this has actually truly happened. I've had these great ideas and I don't act on them. And next thing you know, someone's making a multi-million-dollar fortune out of that idea.
That's crazy that somebody did the same thing with the same time. That's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. Exact same book. And like that settles that. And then we sat there and I really told him, honestly, I don't want to write about forgiveness. I feel like nobody wants to pick that book up. Nobody wants to forget it. But there's something bigger than forgiveness that I feel like could be more helpful and more powerful. And that night, they turned around and left. It was just, they drove down, had this conversation, turned around and drove back to LA. And I thought that was pretty profound. I always look for signs. I always look for messages from the great big universe out there. And this was definitely a message. And I pondered it that night. I was sitting, meditating, and just asking my inner knowing, is the kind of that same feeling when you're talking and there's that word that you want to use.
Yeah.
You can't remember what the word is, but it's just right there.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's how it felt like what I needed to write about. It was like, it's right there, but I just don't know what it is. And all of a sudden, and this is when it gets a little sci-fi and woo, but I share this in my books. I'll share it with you. I heard a voice. It was like a female voice. I've heard this voice a couple of times in my life where I was, like, point where I felt like there was no point in moving on. And this female voice spoke to me and said, it's called the law of zero. And I'm like, what? And it almost freaked me out because it was such an audible voice. I was like, and I got up and I Googled law of zero and there was nothing. So I called Yayoi, and she's Japanese. And Yayoi in Japanese actually means smart. And so I called her and I said, okay, I was told I'm supposed to write something about the law of zero. She goes, oh, Japanese culture, we have this thing called the Enso. It's a hand in the circle, and it means the nothingness, the void, nirvana. And I'm like, oh, boy, maybe there's something more. So I started researching, and I even hired somebody because I'm busy running adventure games.
Yeah.
And I hired someone to help me research. I'm like, I need to know more. And then I started tea, and she's like from the ancient Indian religions, or I should say, not plural, religion. And she was the goddess of the void, like the darkness. And she was like the most powerful goddess. And I'm like, there's something here. And that's when I discovered there's this law, kind of like the law of attraction, where if you're not familiar with that, it's this idea or concept that if you think good thoughts, good things come to you. If you think bad thoughts, bad things come to you. And the biggest kind of that's out there everybody jumped on was The Secret.
Yeah, I read that.
Yeah. And it's so great because it's so simple. It's all you have to do. And my grandfather was like a huge teacher of law of attraction. And this was years before this concept was kind of mainstream, where like a great thing that stuck in my mind as a child was like he wanted to sell his house and retire. He was living in Riverside, California, and he wanted to move to Provo, Utah.
Okay.
So he wrote on every wall in the house, this house will sell on this day for this much cash. And every time we walked in the house, we had to say it out loud. And we had to say it out loud like we believed it. And I remember thinking, this isn't going to happen. And by golly, somebody came to us.
Wow.
So
it's a little bit of a people doing manifesting things now, and that's what it sounds like it was.
It was. But what was really interesting, I don't share this in the book, but I do share that story, but I don't share the fact that later, after they came in and painted the house and did all this work around the house, they actually fell out of escrow. And I remember thinking, but if he created the house telling, why didn't it go all the way through? And that's always stuck with me. And even in my own life, I've been really good about manifesting things, but then things don't last. Like you create this great thing and then it ends up being a mirage. And that's when I started realizing, oh, there's more to this law of attraction. It's the law of zero. You've got to get rid of these belief systems that lie underneath that will literally sabotage this great thing that you just manifest. You'll manifest that new whatever it is that you want in your life, that new job, career, happiness, health, whatever, and then all of a sudden it like just goes away. And that's because there was no room for it to stay because you're running hurt. There's some stuff underneath that you've got to deal with, and that's the stuff that nobody wants to look at.
Got it.
It's difficult. But if you're willing to do the work and you keep revisiting when these things rear their ugly heads, those wonderful, awesome, amazing, good things that you manifest are going to stick around.
And do you have any examples of things that have stuck around since you figured this out?
Yes, my career.
Oh, awesome. That's a good one.
I was always struggling. It was like I would have this moment of huge success and then it would go away. So I would be feast or famine. And once I finally got rid of all the things that were making me go back into famine mode, a lot of it was a worthiness belief system, spending time on things that were not building that business, the calendar being one of them. So I needed to clear that out and let that go. I needed to change my environment to where living in Las Vegas was not a conducive environment to being a corporate team builder. Saying you're from Vegas doing team building is a lot different. Saying you're from San Diego doing team building, which company do you want to work with? The Vegas company is going to come in and bring joy and happiness to your organization, or someone from San Diego.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of things that I realized. And since I finally cleared out those weeds, Adventure Games has been consistently successful, and it either stays steady or grows a little. But it's just steady. It's there. It's constant for me.
Yeah. So tell me, I looked into your book a little bit. I'm going to definitely order it after we end this podcast session because I love the piece where you're talking about, you can manifest, it goes away, but you got to get rid of all that other stuff. I love that because I feel like I'm there in some ways now with very similar with what you're just saying.
Yeah. Would you like my quick cocktail sermon?
Yeah, I would love that. Yeah.
Okay. So through all this discovery, I discovered that there are 5 points of entry to zero. Now, before I go into that, I need to explain what zero is.
Okay.
So zero is a neutral place. It's a state, and it's actually a source of energy. So a lot of people could call this whatever they want. They could call it God, source, nirvana, Buddha, whatever it is. Okay. But it is this source of some sort of power, and it's neutral. So it doesn't know right from wrong. It just knows create. That's all it knows how to do is just create. It's like my dog. All he knows how to do is fetch that ball. It's all he gets his whole life reason for being on this earth.
Yeah.
And so that's this place. And since it's constantly creating, it's constantly in motion, we can actually control it if we know how to access its power fully and wholly. I think the secret and law of attraction, again, that's the tip of the iceberg. That's getting you in the right direction, and you are tapping into that power. But if you really, truly want to control it and to constantly be in the state of neutral, where in being in the state of neutral, you have to accept the best and the worst case scenario. And if you are neutral with both outcomes, then at that point, you can put your energy where you want it to go, and you're not going to be tethered to one way or the other. And so you stand a better chance of it actually happening the way that you want it to happen, because you're not tethered to I don't want this. So a lot of times those springs it's like a rope, anchor's going to pull you down. So there are 5 things that you have to do that exist. And the first thing is awareness. So you've got to become aware of what it is that that you want, or aware of the fact that maybe there's something in you that needs to be looked at.
Okay.
And most of us live our lives completely unaware. Just like when I did those calendars, I was completely unaware that I was doing it to be completely vengeful. And so awareness is entry point number one. Entry point number two is alignment. You are in alignment with what it is that you are aware that you want to fix or create. And those 2 points right there is the law of attractions. Just to give you like a material example, like I want a new car. So you have that on your vision board, the new car, and you're aware that you want it. And now you get in alignment with it, where you're constantly saying you want it. And then you start noticing that everywhere you go, all is that car driving down the street. And all of a sudden you like have the financial means to go get it. It just, because everything kind of starts ticking into place for you to get that specific thing. And so the next thing, the third one, and this is the one where it starts. Now we're going under the surface here, under the iceberg.
Okay.
And this is take ownership. So this is where we have to take ownership of everything in our lives, the good, the bad, all of it. And this is where we have to even own the things that people have done to us, our traumas, situational things. It could be, think about the catastrophes that have happened in our country in the last 12 months. We've got hurricanes, fires. Those are things that happened to you. It's not fair. Why should that happen to me? It did. It sucks, but take ownership of the fact that this is now your new reality. And, or those who were sexually abused, like I was, you have to own the fact that happened to you. And as horrible as it is, and as traumatic as that was, it still happened to you. It's your life. And analogy I give in my book was, imagine I come and throw a bunch of trash on your lawn and leave, and you're like so mad that I did that. And then I'm not coming to clean it up. And you're so mad that you tell everybody, where I become the leading character in your life. Can you believe this guy? And you finally realize that the only person who's going to clean that up is you. So you get your gloves on, big bag, and clean up that trash and haul it away. And now your yard looks beautiful again. So once you take ownership of it and you put a name to it, you can actually do something about it. Rumpelstiltskin. Once they're able to name him Rumpelstiltskin, their problems were away. It's the same thing. And so that takes me to the next point of entry, which is release to receive. So once you own it, you can do something about it. It's kind of like if you're renting your house, you can't like blow out the kitchen wall and expand. You could, but it's yours.
Yeah.
And that's, once it's yours, you have the permission to do something with it. And this is where you release it. And there's a lot of different modules for this. This is where kind of forgiveness comes into play. This could be writing. Writing is a great way to heal this, especially writing out your trauma timeline, all the things that happened to you, and the belief systems that have come into your space because of it. You can choose to say, I don't want this anymore. I'm going to let it go. I'm going to give it no more power, no more energy. And then you start talking about that incident. And then you start stepping out of victimhood when you release it. Once you release it, you're able to receive those first 2 entry points, what you want, and getting in alignment with it. And this is where the things, when we manifest, why they don't stick around is because we haven't released to make room for it. And now there's the room for these things to stick around. And the new behaviors actually come from this. And they've done a lot of studies how these types of releasing your traumas and forgiving and all that actually create new neural pathways in your brain, which then create new behaviors. So you no longer go back to those old behaviors. And then with that, the last point of entry is engaging. I believe that we're all divine, and we all come with this natural being, whatever it is you want to call yourself, being children, or you're just part of this infinite universe. Regardless, like, we are divine, and we have the right to be here, and we have the right to be happy. And this belief system goes into our own constitution and our Bill of Rights, and that we're all created equal. And this comes from this idea and concept that we are divine and that we have this power within us. And so to stake your claim and go after what it is that you want to achieve. And then with all of these other, entry points have been greenlit and you've worked on them, it's going to happen, and it's going to happen fast. And then if it doesn't happen fast, then you want to go to the awareness entry point and ask yourself why. Oh, that's right. There's something else in what I call your human storyteller. These are the building blocks of our beliefs imprinted upon us since birth. Oh, that's right. When I was 5 years old, I was told I'm not good at sports. And I believed that my whole life. I actually am good at sports. You rewrite your code. And
And can you do this for multiple things? So let's say, just as an example, like you've had a bad career choice, or you've, I don't know, just I'll think about for myself, like I had a job that I thought was going to be my next step in my career, and it ended up, I feel like it pushed me back in some ways. I'm past it now. I still think about it and dwell on it once in a while, but I would like not to. And then another thing is like relationships. Like if you've had these friendships that you have chosen to end, but you think, should I go back and try to fix this friendship? Because we were friends for so long. And then I talked myself out of it. And I would really like just not to even think about it anymore. So could this be used to solve those two things?
yeah, absolutely. Take ownership of the part that you played in on all of those scenarios and relationships. Even if you were completely victimized, where let's just say, for example, if somebody breaks into your house and robs you, or somebody physically assaults you, you didn't ask for that. You're an innocent bystander. You still have to, again, goes back to that. You have to own that it's my life, that happened to me. And if we go back to that way of thinking, now let's put that in context of this, let's just say this relationship, this friend. I have to own the fact that I allowed this person in my life to begin with. I allowed this relationship to affect me in such a way where I have these types of emotions and feelings. And then you can say, I don't want that anymore. So once you own it and you can name it, say, yeah, I feel this way when I'm around this person. This person makes me feel this way. I don't want to feel this way anymore. I'm going to own that part that I've allowed that person to make me feel that way in the first place. And then you can release it, and you can choose to say, I don't want to go back to that. Or you can release it and say, I release those bad feelings, but I still love this person and I want them somehow in my space. And but only you can know what's healthy and what's not healthy.
Yeah.
But at least once you start owning the fact of your part of this, then you'll have the clarity and that awareness of how you need to move forward with it. Because sometimes it's time for those relationships to move on and there is no more space. And especially when you're in a new level of alignment,
Yeah.
you'll find that there is no room for these people. And that actually brings me to a point. You have to zero responsibly, because you will say you want a new career and you start going after it. And the next thing you know, you get laid off and you're like, oh, now I don't have a job. I'm like, you asked for a new career. Or you want to be in a loving, healthy relationship. And all of a sudden you realize you're starting to lose all your friends. But then when you look back, you're like, those friends are keeping me out of alignment with this loving, healthy relationship.
Yeah.
So they have to go away. And there's that fallout. And then in those moments, it feels chaotic because you're like, wait, why is everything falling apart?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then you have to have you got to have grace, give yourself grace to realize that this is part of the process. This is part of the refining fire. And, pretty soon you got to stay on that track, and then what you want will show up. What about this career choice? I had one in I write about it in my book. It's silly. It's such a silly example. Dude, excuse me. And I felt silly even writing this, but I felt that it was in that moment, it was so real. I was in my early 20s. I had auditioned for Disney that came to BYU, and I was up against all the music, dance, theater people who were just hot stuff, right? They're great singers, dancing, got it all. I could sing, I could not dance. And they started cutting everybody, going rounds and rounds with these auditions. It goes down to me, and this dancer, this girl dancer. And they bring me into a practice room, I'm singing my scales, and they're like, you can play a number of our princes and you can sing every single one of our male tracks in all of our shows at Disney World. Yeah, when we start next week. And I was like, and I said, no.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I said no because, and you have to read my book to really understand the context of why I said no.
Okay.
I was so on this like pre-written path of you go to school, get your degree, get married in the temple, have a family, and drop out of school. Well, nothing. I was so badly programmed in this, and that was my biggest regret. And it still is this day. Oh my gosh, what would my life be like if I had taken that Disney job? And with a dream, as a young 22-year-old, that's everybody's dream to work for Disney and like sing and dance and do all that fun stuff. But I've had to forgive myself for being in a state, in a place in my life in that moment when the opportunity was handed to me that I wasn't ready to receive it. And I've had to come to my own zero with that.
Yeah.
And with that, now I've moved on. And I think, my gosh, I probably would still be working for Disney if I was there. I wouldn't have this incredible company and incredible team. And I
You
wouldn't
wouldn't have written this book.
freedom, the book and the freedom that
Yeah.
comes with having your own business. So why things happen the way they do, but sometimes we think we're going on the path that's right for us, and then it ends up being a complete roadblock. And it's okay. You can get back to zero at any moment in time. And what's really great is when you live in this constant state of zero, you always just know what to do. You have this innate knowing. And a good example of this is I was in New Orleans for New Year's Eve, and there was a terrorist attack on Bourbon Street. I was on Bourbon Street, and I was down there with some friends, and it was getting late, and we were walking down. Let's just make our way down Bourbon Street because we were on the other side, like where the gay bars. So we were on our way down, and all of a sudden I just had this feeling in my stomach, like this is bad. Something bad is going to happen here. You need to get out of here. So I told my friends, I don't want to walk down Bourbon Street. Let's just get a bar right there. Actually, I said, let's just go back to where the gay bars are.
Yeah.
We started walking in that direction. We found ourselves in another one. And then when they started getting late, and I probably should go. And then to get to my hotel, I'd have to walk through Bourbon Street. Yeah, it was like, don't go there. And so I get to the side street to my hotel and went to bed and woke up. And I missed it, I don't know, 45 minutes to an hour.
Wow.
Had we gone bar hopping down the street, we could have easily been there. Regardless, because I do constantly live in this state of like just being neutral, I knew innately that I needed to get out of there. And I woke up the next morning, my phone blowing up, everyone asking me, are you okay?
Are you safe? Yeah.
Yeah. And it was awful what happened. Awful. And the feeling the next morning was just so somber. We're walking around going, what are we supposed to do now? We're supposed to be happy and drink.
Yeah.
What do you do? You know, everybody's stunned. And so I really believe that when you constantly live in this state, you're always going to know what to do. And moving forward, you aren't going to get in that bad relationship. You aren't going to follow that career path that's not going to be right for you. You will just know immediately, yes or no.
Yeah.
But it takes a lot of work to get there. This is not an easy thing. It took me years. And I still struggle. I still fall out of zero.
Yeah.
And I'm constantly having to get that. But overall, like I'm constantly living my life that I'm always accepting the worst case scenario.
And you seem happy with yourself too.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
so that's amazing. What more could you ask for? That's amazing.
Yeah.
I think your book would help a lot of people. Like I said, I will definitely order it whenever we're done with this podcast. Before ending though, I did have a question for you about who do you think that voice in your head telling you to do, or that voice you heard, not necessarily in your head, who do you think that is?
I put a name to her. I just call her Mother God.
Okay.
And I don't know if it's my guardian angel. I don't know. Like, we don't know what that is. But it was a very audible voice. And I talk about that voice in my book. There was 3 distinct times it was spoke to me. Once when I was like 8 years old, once when I was 25 years old, and this time I was what, 44, 45 years old. When I was 34, whenever I started learning,
Okay.
that's when I heard that. That was the last time I heard that voice. So I believe that whatever it is, this message I want to get out there, this message is a love letter to the gay and LGBTQ community. There's many of us that are running hurts. We've all experienced some sort of trauma in our lives, if it be rejection or confusion or not loving yourself. There's I've met very few people like you and I have not some sort of big traumatic event
Yeah.
or a series of lots of little ones that have carved and shaped who we are and how we think and how we see the world and believe what we believe about ourselves. And I'm here to say there's something so much greater out there. Like we have so much love and potential within ourselves if we can just allow ourselves to see the it's in broken, ugly pieces.
Yeah.
So we're able to put a name to it and look at it. You'll realize that those bits, broken and ugly pieces, are actually the part where the light gets in, and those end up being the most beautiful parts of us.
I think your book is going to help so many people, especially in the LGBTQ plus community. So everybody should go. I'm going to order this as soon as this podcast is done. Chad's website for his book is called lawofzerobook.com. Go there and order it. It's also, I've seen it on Amazon, and it's probably in any bookstore that's out there now online, correct?
Yeah, it's on Barnes and Noble, Target. I've seen it. Yeah, right now it's holding strong as a bestseller on Amazon.
Awesome.
Yeah, I like trying to push that #1 spot as the #2
Yeah.
for a couple days, but I think this will be one of those books that is a slow roll. I think it's one of those that you're going to read it and you're going to resonate with it.
Yeah.
And my hope is that we as a community can heal.
Yeah.
And it's time that we rise from the ashes, and like true ashes. Like, sure, we've made great headway, but a lot of us we've made this great headway, but we're still running hard.
Yeah.
And it's time to rise above it and just be our authentic true selves and be happy.
Yeah, I love that. And just to give a plug to your adventure game, adventuregameinc.com is the website. And is anything you want to it seems like it's all over the country when I went and looked, and you can get.
Yeah, we service the entire country. So it's anybody needs a team building exercise for their organization, for their team,
Yeah.
for whatever you need. We've got so many different programs from indoor, outdoor, 1 hour, 2 hour, 3 hour. It's great. And we love it. We love the fact that we put smiles on faces every day.
Yeah.
That's what we do. We get paid to do it.
Yeah. That's awesome. All right. Again, check out Chad's website, lawofzerobook.com. Check it out, order it, put a comment, and let us know what you think about it once you get it. And if you have something that really changes in your life, we would love to know. So let us know. Thank you so much for being on, Chad. I appreciate it. You were a fantastic guest. I loved your story. And good luck with the sales of the book. Are you going to do an audiobook by any chance?
Yes, it's already recorded and it's been submitted. My publisher submitted it to Audible and all of the different formats. And so I'm just waiting to hear when it gets approved. There is an approval process, but it did pass all the tests. So fingers crossed, I'm hoping next month we'll be sending out a press release when the Audible is ready, because all of my friends don't read. So they're like, when's that?
That was one of my New Year's resolutions, was to make sure that I start reading more this year. And I'm actually on a good path of doing that. So I have one book I'm finishing up, and yours will be my next. So I'll order it today, and it should probably come from
Awesome.
Amazon in a day or so. So thank you so much. It was a pleasure having you on.
Thank you.
And if everybody, be sure to subscribe to my podcast on your favorite platform. Leave a comment, especially after you read Chad's book. We'd love to hear what you have to say. So thanks so much for being on, Chad.
All right. Thanks, Zach. Appreciate it.